Yeah! Woo! And we're live.
What's up, everybody?
Sick Boy live from the HQ, Movember edition. Look at that stash on you, Tay.
You're really doing some work there.
Looks like you smeared just a little bit of dookie over the upper lip.
Just a light smattering.
Yeah. Folks, welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us for the Sick Boy Live Movember edition.
Woo!
We are so elated to be hanging out with you today. We've got a really great show planned, but before we get into the nitty gritty, a couple of housekeeping items to bring to the forefront. Number one, as you can see to the left side underneath, there's a poll section. We've got a couple of polls on the go. The very top one is who has truly the best mo, and I want to say I'm a little bit chuffed. I'm a little bit miffed.
No, chuffed is not. No, if you're chuffed,
I'm a little bit
chuffed to bits.
I'm a little bit chapped.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, my ass is chapped.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
What's wrong with it?
Because Taylor and Brian both have votes and I have none. So
Oh, you don't have any yet?
I don't have a single vote.
Oh.
I'm still in your camp though, Jer, even though I've
By
got
the end of
votes.
the month, look, I'm just going to say this. By the end of the month, this poll is going to change.
I will say, Jared, people are voting with their dollars because you are leading in our Movember donation.
He is.
I am
category.
killing
So-
it.
He is,
I
and
am.
it was a day one surge for
was.
Jer.
All for
And
my
we're-
family.
and
Thank
we're-
you, family.
And
Thank
we're
you.
playing the long
Thanks,
game.
Mom. I know
We're
you're
playing-
here.
We're playing the long game here.
So the polls are there to the left. If you want to chime in, would love to hear your thoughts on a few different things there. And then next to that, you'll see Ask a Question segment. So, ask a question. We would love to hear what you think about the conversations that are taking place tonight. So you can always ask a question there. Try to keep the questions out of the chat because it might get missed. But if it goes in that Ask a Question section, we will be able to see it. And then the other thing is there should be a call to action button that basically says donate to the cause. I hope you see that. This is the first time we've used this feature. So if you do see it, click it. But if you don't see it, you can go to sickboypodcast.com/Movember. Again, that's sickboypodcast.com/Movember, where we are taking donations to raise money, all in the name of men's health awareness and men's health research and men's health programming across the world. Really, Movember does a ton of work in the world of men's health, and we will be hearing all about that soon when we get to our very first guest. But
We should also caveat that with Jer's in the lead, and it's a competition, and there's going to be a silly consequence for whoever loses. And so, if you want to make that a tight race and an exciting race, then
do we want to talk about what the silly consequence is? Because me and Bri felt cool with what the consequence was, but
Yeah.
you weren't for it.
I'm not. Well, I don't want a tattoo on the inside of my lip.
Why not? No one can see it.
It must feel like the stakes are even higher now that you
Now
know
that you know you're
last,
losing.
too.
That's right. That's right.
Please donate.
See-
Please help me.
If by the end of the show we could all be even, that would be. I would really love that. That would bring a lot of excitement into the next 3 weeks.
And
for
I'm
me.
in last. And honestly, everybody, not a very a foreign. It's a foreign feeling for me.
The other
last.
the
You
other
should
thing,
keep going last, to be
the other
honest.
thing that I want to get out there before we get to the show is that shop.sickboypodcast.com. You can go there, and if you want to donate in a different way, instead of giving our Mo team your hard-earned dollars, you can actually purchase some Movember exclusive Sick Boy merch. I'm actually wearing one of the shirts right now. You might have seen this shirt featured in the pre-show there. It's hard to see from here, but it says "Ask me about my feelings," and we're dropping new merch once a week. The next shirt that we are dropping in the shop will be coming out tomorrow, so keep your eyes open for that. We're really excited about it.
I think I might switch my outfit later in the show and go grab that shirt and put it on too. So
That's a good,
you can-
that's a good idea.
to
Yeah.
see what's coming
Give a
next.
little preview.
Are you guys ready to bring our first guest to the stage, aka the screen, aka to your living room, your car, on the shitter, wherever you might be watching or tuning in from across the world?
I am ready, and our guest is not included in the poll because it would be too skewed.
Oh my God! In terms of the best mustache, folks,
Mitch was born with a mustache.
Mitch was literally came out of the womb with a mustache. Please put your hands together for our friend Mitch from Movember. Mitch is the director of development at Movember Canada, has been with the organization for the past 8 years. He's passionate about changing our assumptions about men's health and breaking down the barriers that keep men from talking. When Mitch isn't working, you can find him swimming in the ocean, practicing woodworking, or riding his road bike on the North Shore of Vancouver. Mitch, what's up, buddy? Look at that fucking stash.
That's crazy.
And this is only 8 days in.
It's coming in.
It's coming in very nicely.
Jeremy, the one thing I didn't put in my bio there is I'm also very passionate about your mustache. Because,
hey.
The shittier the mustache, the better the conversation.
Okay. Well, you know what? I took a picture of all of us so you can get a nice up and close look at what day 8 looks like. And Mitch, I want to get your thoughts on this. So day 8, this is our mug shots right here.
Okay.
Now you can't really tell from me. I have a light handlebar. It's a light handlebar.
The thing that I'm really disappointed about is that you actually cropped mine so that I look shorter than you guys, which is that's what I'm concerned about here, because I think all of our mustaches look like day 8 mustaches so far. I feel like they're pretty close there.
Yeah. Mitch
is
an outlier.
Look significantly shorter.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate Taylor. Yours is curling around there a bit, which I appreciate. Brian, yours looks a little prickly, actually.
It is very prickly.
Yeah.
Yes. It is a prickly stash.
I have a wiry, because
Maddie is upset.
I struggled to grow facial hair in general, though look, like I would say growing a good mustache or beard is something that like I've been insecure about most of my life. But what better time of the year to grow a mustache and put some eyes on my my insecurities and vulnerabilities?
There you go.
Than this time of year, right?
Spun that
and so
around.
If there's anybody, listen, if there's anybody who really wants to support my Mo growth, you can go to sickboypodcast.com/Movember, and my name is right on the page there. You can click on that and donate some dollars to me.
Well, with that said, Mitch, why don't you give us a little kind of rundown on why the mustache, what is Movember, what's the deal with Movember, and maybe give us a little story, a background into how Movember came to be.
Sure, all of that in one, no problem.
In 30 seconds or less, and go.
Perfect. Movember, I think everybody knows it for growing the beautiful mustaches. It's a good laugh. But it started in Australia, actually, in 2003. A couple friends were sitting at a bar, having a couple beers, and their conversation turned to like a very intellectual topic of 70s fashion. And they joked around, hey, let's bring back the mustache, and got 30 of their friends to do it that first year, and had a blast and had a huge party at the end. But that's all it was. Movember didn't start out as a charity, or think we'd be chatting about it today. It was just like an excuse for 30 dudes to have a good time. But they realize, similar to our mustaches right now, just like sparks conversations, and people are coming up to them being like, what is that dead animal on your face? Like, what are you doing? So they added a cause to it. And, fast forward to today, from those 30 friends, we've had over 5 million people take part, funded over 1,200 men's health projects, and raised about $1 billion for men's health. So pretty epic when you think about it. That it all started with a few mustaches and starting that conversation. And, originally it was for prostate cancer. And I think a lot of people recognize that. And on that side of it, there wasn't a lot being done for prostate cancer before. So in the past, 10 years, we've advanced prostate cancer, which previously would have taken like 60 or 70 years because there's been so much, attention, which is pretty awesome. Like 5 years from now, we'll have dads and grandfathers alive to see their grandkids, which is pretty special.
Now, I want to just get this out of the way. The whole prostate cancer thing. In terms of getting your prostate checked for prostate cancer, that's not like typically that. I'm 33, right? So typically that's not something that I would be thinking about doing yet.
Is it
quite
40,
yet? But I am coming up there, right? I think it's like, at what age do people want to start getting their prostate checked? And I don't mean checked at home.
Recreationally.
No, not recreationally. I'm talking about by a professional who knows how to do it.
Yeah, so we recommend 50 is a good time to have that conversation with the doctor. But unless it runs in your family, your dad or your brother, or actually if you're African or Caribbean descent, you're at a higher risk. So you need 45.
I didn't know that.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Something that when you mentioned there about prostate cancer, Movember kind of initially being about prostate cancer, actually, I must admit, I did a prostate cancer fundraiser years and years ago in November, and I was calling it Movember, and at the time, this would have been 2012, maybe 2011, and I didn't actually know at the time that Movember was a charity. I didn't know that it was like an organization. I thought that November had just been completely taken by the mustache, like as a cultural thing. And it was like all about prostate cancer. And I didn't know, so I didn't know this at the time. And then somebody tuned me up to it. And so my question to you, Mitch, is over time, I always looked at Movember as you know, cancer focused, prostate cancer in particular, prostate and testicular cancer. And over the past few years, we've seen Movember like really dive into the mental health side of things when talking about mental health. For the organization, like when did that shift change where it started to become this really like big umbrella for men's health and kind of left the just focusing on prostate cancer, testicular cancer?
Yeah. So, I mean, since the beginning, it's always been men's health. It just the first cause area was prostate cancer. And you know, we added mental health and suicide prevention in 2012 in Canada. And yeah, for good reason. I mean, like the stats around it in Canada are pretty bad. 75% of all suicides are by men. We lose 7 men to suicide in Canada every day. It's a hidden health crisis, really. So, you know, the attention that it needs is important, and using these mustaches as kind of that badge, and that conversation started to get that topic going is really important. So,
and what was and you know, I know that I've seen you on your social media channels and stuff. You're vocal about your inspiration for, you know, why you grow your Mo every year, and your inspiration for being a part of the organization that you work for, obviously so passionately. What is that inspiration for you?
Yeah, I mean, I originally did it just for fun, which is, I think, a reason a lot of people do Movember. It's like, and it's kind of sneaky. Movember uses the mustache and doing it for fun as that Trojan horse, really, to get guys talking about this stuff. Yeah. But then when they did add the mental health side, like it definitely hit a personal side for my family. I lost my grandfather to suicide when I was, you know, a few months old, right? So I never got to meet him, and so I always, you know, since then I've always thought about him and thought like what I missed out on, and like what memories I could have made with him if things had been different, if Movember was around back then, if things could have been different. And I think for me too, like I think about him all the time. I never met the guy, but like that ripple effect that it has on people when you lose someone to suicide, it has a ripple effect on friends and family and the community. And I never met him, so I always think about, you know, people that lost a best friend or lost their dad or lost their partner, you know, how hard that must be. And so, you know, as bad as the suicide stats are, it is preventable. You know, it doesn't need to be this way. And for men that take their lives at 3 times the rate of women, there's just not enough being done for men, and it's caused. You need to do something about it. This is a way.
And these are just some of the things that we're going to be talking about with our guest coming up, Dr. John Oliffe. Can't wait to get to it. But before we do, Mitch, I'm curious to know, you know, we kick the show off by asking people to donate to the cause, you know, sickboypodcast.com/Movember, you know, donate to our mustaches, give us money, buy shirts so that we can give money to Movember. Where did the funds go? Like, what is Movember doing with the actual funds that come into the organization itself?
Yeah. So when people donate, and hopefully you guys can rack up some good donations this year, it goes to the Movember charity. And last year, about 85% on every dollar went towards men's health projects, and it helps tackle those big issues. So, you know, new treatments for prostate cancer, survivorship programs for men going through testicular cancer. And I'd say on the mental health side, that's where some of the most innovative stuff is. You know, it's really focusing on groups that need the support and are at higher risk. So Indigenous communities, you know, we know that they're at, you know, 4 to 20 times the national average for suicide rates. This year we launched the first ever subarctic Indigenous mental health and addiction center in Churchill, Manitoba. We do work with responder groups. We do work for youth mental health, teaching, mental health through sport. We know mental health challenges like start young, so getting in there early is really important. And this year we launched a program for dads, how to be, support Canadian dads. So lots of different things. Probably one of the coolest ones that if your viewers want to check out, it's called Movember Conversations, and it's basically a conversation starter about how to support other people in your life that might be going through a tough time, upskills them. So you can head to conversations.movember.com, and that one's a really, really special tool that hopefully everybody.
One thing that I think that's so that has become really tangible for me over the past few years, in terms of like donating to charities and seeing how money helps organizations make a difference, especially in healthcare, is like growing up, I guess I would think of like the runs or walks for cancer awareness, and like I would think about all the money
Skip
that was
rope
being
for heart.
raised. and I would try to imagine like, where does that money go? Like, what does it actually do? But then when I started to learn more about cystic fibrosis specifically, and all the money that like Shinorama raises on an annual basis, and how that has been statistically increasing the life expectancy of people living with cystic fibrosis, it's become so much more tangible to me, the way that money can actually make a difference in a really positive and powerful way, especially if there's a well-structured organization behind it that's like sort of like quarterbacking the whole. That's a good analogy, actually, quarterbacking.
You
because
love
it's
a
like
good,
very,
you love a good analogy.
very manly to be a quarterback. Stand like just directing the field and where this money's going.
Okay.
So, maybe I'm just overindulging here a little bit in this analogy, but anyway, I think it's really powerful what Movember's doing, and so I really appreciate the work that you're doing, Mitch, and the team that's working with you.
Mitch, we knew that we were going to be hanging out with you for a little bit before we got to our conversation with John, and in preparation for that, we decided to put together a little game. Because as a man who's worked with Movember for so many years, I'm sure you're aware of like some of the most iconic mustaches that have come to be over the decades. So we're gonna play a little game of Guess That Mo. How this is gonna work is you're gonna have 10 seconds to guess the stash. Okay. You're only going to get the outline of the mustache, and then within that 10 seconds, you got to guess who it's going to be, and then we'll reveal who the mustache belonged to. Are you ready?
I'm ready as I'm going to be, but I'm terrible at trivia. So.
I really hope you don't fuck this up. Here we go.
All right.
Guess that mo!
Who is it?
All right, whose mustache is this? 10 seconds.
I believe this is Tom Selleck.
Tom Selleck.
Tom
Okay,
Selleck? Final
all right.
answer?
Is that your final answer?
Yeah.
Well, let's find out.
It's Tom Selleck!
Hey, wow, good job. Amazing. All right, ready for the next one?
1 for 1, 100%.
Guess that mo!
It's really hard to see this one. You got to look real close to the screen.
I don't know.
Oh, come on, this one should be obvious.
John Waters! That's a tough one.
John Waters was a tough one.
That's the toughest one.
All right, here we go.
Wait.
Go for it, Brian. Go for it.
Who is John Waters?
John Waters is a famous American director, and very interesting personality. He's quite funny.
Mitch, I find this game really hard because I'm not a big movie.
Oh, someone
buff.
said Italian. Is he? Is John Waters Italian?
What? I'm terrible at movies.
William, I'm
and
looking this up.
I've actually seen quite a few movies, especially with Taylor, but I mostly fall asleep when I go to the theater.
American. Yeah, I see.
And so I was putting together this game, and I was like,
Who is this guy?
I don't think I would be very good at this game. So if you really only get Tom Selleck, I just want you to know that I'm right there with you. And
Dude, we're
We can
asking you to guess people based off of like 4 inches of hair on their face. It's insane.
listen, we can have an open, vulnerable conversation about this later, you and I. But just know that I'm there with you.
I do appreciate the Pokemon background.
Thank you.
You got to catch all those mustaches. Here's the third round.
Guess that mo!
This fucking game.
Oh, I should know this one.
It's not Hitler.
No.
Charlie Chaplin.
Oh, you got 3 seconds. Charlie Chaplin, final answer?
Yeah.
It's Charlie Chaplin!
Yeah, good job, buddy.
Dude, the voiceover you did on
All
this is
right,
fantastic.
here we go.
That's sweet, eh?
Guess that mo!
I love this one.
Wait.
This is Albert Einstein.
Albert
I
Einstein.
can see Albert
I
Einstein.
can see it, but
I'm not sure which
This
what
is
one
misleading.
I think
This
it
is
might
pretty
be Albert
misleading.
Einstein.
It's Chris.
Oh.
Oh, that one.
also
was,
check out that chest.
that one was very
It's
misleading.
the
was-
same thing.
It was misleading, right?
All right, we got one more.
Guess that move.
This is.
You know this.
I do know this one.
You
His
got it.
name's like slipping.
He recently left us.
Burt Reynolds.
Oh, right at the buzzer,
Right at the
Right.
buzzer.
dude.
Get
hell
by with a little
yeah.
help from your friends, you know.
The chat's kind of popping off here. We had Bridie chime in and said, "I thought it was Hitler." So somebody else was just laughing. Chaplin.
I don't remember Hitler ever wearing a bowler.
Someone just straight up lolled at Einstein. Oh, that's great. Yeah, this is good. This is really fun. Well, that was really fun, Mitch. I want to say, buddy, over the last few years, we have had. This isn't the first time that we've kind of like had a bit of a relationship with Movember. And, early days, one of our very first live shows was in Toronto at the Movember HQ on Richmond Street, I believe it was. And we've had a chance to meet you and hang out with you a number of times. And every single time, it is an absolute pleasure. We think the world of you. You're one of the coolest people we've ever met. And just to have you on the show for just a sliver of time has been such an absolute treat. So thank you so much, Mitch. It really, really is the best.
I also just want to add that you said something, Mitch, where you said that the mustache was the Trojan horse that like allows the conversation to happen. And I can't tell you how much I went, oh my God, that's exactly how I feel about what we do and us like using humor to have conversations. And like I've never thought of it as the Trojan horse. And that is going to stick with me.
We're going to
for a
steal
very long
that.
time.
We're going to steal that, and we will not give you credit. Thank you very much.
Very much so.
Thanks, Mitch.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, we are moving on. We are going to go right into our guest for the evening. Very excited about this. Dr. John Oliffe, is a professor, Canada Research Chair in Men's Health Promotion, and founder and lead of the Men's Health Program at the University of British Columbia. His work focuses on men's depression and suicidality, and he is currently working with Movember on their Men Building Better Relationships program. I'm really, really excited to talk about all of this stuff. Wherever you are, please give a big round of applause for Dr. John Oliffe. Hello, sir.
Hi, how are you?
I'm
Very
doing
good, very good.
well.
You got your mustache is coming in. I was saying earlier, you got a little bit of that salt and pepper.
Yeah, got the spread across the face. I'll trim it down and try and make some sense of it a bit later in the week.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, I probably should have brought this up with Mitch. One thing I really think is important about men's health that hasn't been touched on yet is razor burn. Because
Yes.
I'm telling you right now, man.
I found it. I
gonna-
found the secret.
What is it?
I get razor burn in a very specific spot,
Same.
right under here. Now it's because, well, on my face anyway, the grain of my hair.
I can't believe we're actually going into this right now.
I can't believe we're going into this when we brought John on.
I know.
But this is
it's
great.
different. It's different on this side than it is on this side, but I shave it like this in the same direction. And then I get razor burn when I even if it's just a little
So
bit
it's
a little
directional.
bit side grain,
Yeah.
not against the grain,
Yeah.
but like not with it.
Actually,
Riveting.
I shaved for the first time this morning after the straight razor shave, and Joel said that last week, and I actually changed, and I've had better results since then. So
Riveting
you're right, yeah.
stuff. So glad that we're covering the stuff that matters, John. This is why we showed up. And what are your thoughts on razor burn? Go.
So I go with the grain. When I go against, I get a rash, and I got a bit of an idea that the blades are getting a bit blunter.
Yeah.
Interesting. Like by design, like big razor conspiracy.
That's it. A
Big
bit of a
razor.
thing. I think there's a lack of good razors out there at the moment.
You know what's funny is I joined Dollar Shave Club a couple years ago,
We
and
are
I've
not sponsored.
I've been
I'm going to have to
getting,
bleep that out here. Give me 1 second. I'll go back and...
I've been getting shipments, honestly, probably way more razor blades than I probably need, to be honest.
Brian,
but
you could use one razor blade for 4 years.
totally,
Yeah.
100%. And the funny thing is that I find that the quality in razor blades that come in each order is different. Like sometimes I get like that sweet razor blade that doesn't It just fucking cuts like a knife
Yeah.
straight.
Yeah.
But then
So that
sometimes
you
it sucks.
this is again big razor. This is so that you'll go, oh, but the next batch will be better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to rein it back in. So, John, let's talk about your work, specifically the work that you're doing with Movember. I had said in the intro there that you're working on the Men Building Better Relationships program. Can you give us a bit of a rundown on what that is and what that entails in terms of your work?
Yeah, so for the longest time, we've been doing work in men's depression and suicidality. And Brendan Mayer, who heads up, one of the mental health arms at Movember, contacted us and sort of said, I think we could do some work in relationships, men's intimate partner relationships, because we know that when guys have a distressed relationship or a ruptured relationship, they're up to 8 times more likely than females who divorce to suicide. So there's a kind of a correlation here where bad relationships, distressed relationships really can impact mental health. So we thought about doing some work to try and better understand guys when they go through relationship breakups. And the idea is to get upstream of the distress and try and help blokes build better relationships. Because a lot of times we don't really know. We might go in as rookies and not really have a clear sense of what we want from a relationship, might not know how to negotiate it. So we've interviewed lots of guys from Canada and Australia to try and better understand, what forms a good relationship and what the skills are that they might want.
Yeah. One thing that comes to mind when you say all of that is through the work that we've done over the last 6 years and having conversations on this podcast, I mean, and I'm talking from a real personal point. Like, I think one of the key points to a successful and like flourishing relationship is your ability to meaningfully communicate with the other person that you're in a relationship with. And I know that it's like sort of the stereotype of men that men are very stoic and have a bit of a harder time communicating about things that might be challenging. I mean, we've had so many people write in to tell us that it's like weird to hear 3 guys so openly talk about things that they find tough or whatever on the show, which I always found very funny because like that's just our relationship. That's who we are to each other, and that's how we've always related to one another. What do you like? Where do you think that stems from, this notion that men have a harder time taking action when it comes to healthy communication, whether that's communicating with their loved ones or I mean, like even communicating with their medical team, like their healthcare professionals, which I think is one of the big reasons why a lot of men, end up sick or miss out on these pre-screening programs or end up, with suicidal thoughts or what have you.
Yeah, you're spot on about the communication piece. So, in our interviews with the guys, they're really clear that the thing they kind of regretted or where they wanted to school up was around communication. So this idea that not just, oftentimes when guys connect with guys, there'll be a lot of humour, there'll be a lot of one-upmanship, there'll be a lot of, kind of fun and a bit of teasing. And that doesn't always work with, intimate partner relationships. And so,
Really?
well, that's what they're telling us. So, so I'm just the messenger. But, just to say, it's super interesting that a lot of times what we sense is that relationships happen to guys. They don't necessarily go in with that skill set around communication that might be needed. And one of the things that I found really interesting from the fellas was, they'd say, I really want to get into this space of sitting down and chatting with my partner about the relationship. Like actually mapping it, seeing how we're doing, how we're tracking, what could be adjusted and improved. And I thought it was really wise counsel. And a lot of these guys go through breakups, they come out the other end and sort of start to think about more formal ways of communicating that are going to keep things on track. Because there's plenty of guys get blindsided and there's plenty of guys in distressed relationships too.
That when you said that it's you wanted to work downstream of the issue and get ahead of it by building the good relationship in the first place instead of treating the symptom of the relationship, which is that they break up, and then there's the issues that follow. Instead of trying to have conversations around the symptoms that follow, treating it to build it so that those symptoms don't happen, or they happen much less in the first place. Like what I feel like in the medical world, it really, a lot of stuff ends up being treating the symptom. Like what was the genesis of like really trying to focus there, and like how was that? Was that met? Because that part, the part about building good relationships, that it's almost like an abstraction from your work in talking about, oh, this is like the issue, this is what's happening with this person, and this is how we can help this person who's going through this thing. Like how is that met, creating a program that kind of deals in this realm that is a little bit more abstract from like what you'd probably think of in dealing with mental health?
Yeah. Gee, you guys are spot on. Great question. So we try, if your end product is suicide, you're always trying to get upstream for prevention. And typically the healthcare system, and this is not a criticism, healthcare system deals in problems. And, so prevention there's not always an emphasis on. So Movember have been very keen to try and get, as we'd say, upstream, to try and skill guys in a way that they would better deal with relationships. And that might even be better exits from a relationship that's not working. So just most of the funding and most of the money for relationship services are way downstream, not just suicide prevention, but intimate partner violence and domestic violence. And they're really important areas. But imagine if we could get upstream and start to prevent some of those issues occurring. Mm-hmm. So we've been starting to build an interventional program, for want of a better term, at Movember to try and bring guys into a space where they can safely, equip themselves with a few more skills for better dealing with relationships, because they're work. They're pretty hard work.
Yeah.
In terms of having those conversations in the intimate partner relationships, you talked about how, like, if it's a group of guys talking together, they sort of poke fun at each other, the one-upmanship and those types of characteristics. How does it differ when you're speaking to an intimate partner? When you spoke to guys or interviewed guys, did they talk about what worked in terms of intimate partner relationships?
Yeah.
Good job, Brian. Good job. Everyone give Brian a round of applause. He said intimate correctly. Very good. If I said that to my girlfriend, here's a good example. Here's a good example of where this doesn't work in intimate relationships. If she struggled with saying intimate and I did that,
you can do it. Come on, you can do it.
I would be having a cold night by myself, I believe.
Yes, definitely. You're lucky that I don't cuddle you at night.
Right. Let's not distract from this good question that Brian asked.
No,
yes, that's right.
I would cuddle you, though.
All right. So a couple of things are worth thinking about. One is that it would be a bit of a masculine norm that we might like to solve problems. And one of my favourite quotes from the guys who we interviewed was this fella who was talking to his partner, and she was talking about a problem and he was talking about solving it. And
Classic.
She wanted him to listen, but he wanted to solve it because that's his job, like his work, and he was bringing it home. And so they developed a scheme whereby she would actually do a sign and he would know that she was venting. And I know it sounds like pretty simple stuff, but a lot of guys will get caught in it could be something that I can help with. And they'll jump straight into that.
Yeah.
John, I thought we talked about this beforehand, that we weren't going to bring up the things that I brought to this this research. If we can keep my relationships out of this. It's a little bit too close to home. So, please.
I was gonna say this sounds a little bit like my therapy session.
Yeah.
I can't say how much I resonate with that. So and funnily enough,
dude.
but
Yeah,
I hear you say that and I go, that is me to a fucking T.
Yeah,
fix-
you
I
do
can
that
fix
with
it.
us.
I can
I
fix
do-
it.
yeah. We'll do it with everybody. I'm just like, okay, there's a problem in front of us. We need to fix it.
Yeah.
And over, so on a personal note, in the spring of this year, my wife and I were going through IVF treatment to get pregnant, and that had a whole storm of emotions and rough patches and hard conversations and like ups and downs and wild swings, and I struggled a lot early on in the communication side, even from doing we do this 4 times a week where we sit down and have really hard conversations. And
It's a lot harder to practice what you preach.
And I
Totally.
listen and I listen and I listen, and I'm not really ever trying to solve anyone's problem when we're having conversations like this. It is exactly what you're saying from the healthy relationship side of just, if you're venting or you're hearing somebody, just listen.
Mm.
And I went through this arc where I ended up having the conversation with Kyle. Like, I want to know if we can be more upfront with each other about what we need in the moment. Like, do you want a solution to a problem, or do you just want to go and for me to be there for you? And can we start conversations with that pretext? And that was a big leap for us to communicate better, and for me to be there for her in a bigger way, in a better way.
Yeah, I think it's such wise counsel, It doesn't hurt to have a bit of guidance about what the other person wants, because if we're willing to listen, and we want to help, and if helping is listening and not solving the problem, then I'm sure we can chime in. We don't always read the play, so I think it's a really great strategy, and it sounds simple, but it can be so effective. The other one too. Sometimes if someone belabors what they're feeling enough, sometimes you start to feel like you might be to blame. And that's the other one, that can happen just because you're hearing something so often. And that's something to be avoided as well, but it's to be discussed, to be worked out. So they're challenging, right?
We had a question come in from one of the viewers here. Barbara had asked, if guys aren't communicating in the relationships, are they exhibiting behaviors that may indicate the relationship is on rocky ground?
One of the things that we noticed with guys, that a lot of guys would say to us, this is our term, self-censoring, that they would be in a relationship and they'd be uncertain about whether they should say something. So their values might be different on a particular issue, and they just might not voice it for fear of, well, I might get rejected here, I might get dumped, or let's see, I might end up in conflict, and I'm not really into conflict. The problem with that was it was a big build over time that just built up, and then a lot of times for guys, our expression will be anger. It'll come off as anger, and that's unfortunate because we regret that. And so that big build, you can kind of see it. So when guys are quiet, you might be able to pick up on the fact that they might be quiet, to a point where they're really not engaging. They're starting to sort of isolate a little bit within the relationship.
I in talking about all of this, it makes me think a lot about grief. Talking about earlier, you were mentioning, you kind of referenced breakups and how oftentimes men who are in a relationship that ends, they're more apt to be in a really rough spot than typically women are. And it just makes me think about like how we as men handle grief, handle like big transitions in life, transitions that seem to be tough. Is through the research and work that you're doing, like is the discussion around transitions in life and grief, and not grief just from loss of a loved one or a family member, but like grief in all sense of the word. I mean, like right now we are going through a process of grief globally, grieving the life that we once knew before COVID, right? So is there much to be said about how men handle and deal with transitions in life?
Yeah. So transitions are a real sticking point they threaten mental health, and I'm sure it does for women as well as men. But just to say, for guys, we do work with guys who are returning from active military service, so they're transitioning back to civilian life. We talk to guys about a diagnosis of prostate cancer, and there's huge transitions with that, retirement, divorce and separation with what we're talking about today. And transitions are hard because they disrupt your routine. Oftentimes they rupture your purpose. And they're two things that guys tend to need or want because it gives them some control, some estimation of what's going to happen tomorrow. So that uncertainty is really hard. And I always think about uncertainty as, the worry about tomorrow, the uncertainty of tomorrow, nestled up with the worry about the past, the rumination about what I should have done better, is the perfect storm for, depressive symptoms and anxiety. And I think COVID's been that for a lot of people. And I do think, going into the transition to whatever it's going to be post-COVID, I think there are challenges for everybody. But we know that guys, oftentimes we won't pick up on their depressive symptoms or their anxiety, but it'll be there.
Yeah, it makes me, like, you saying that makes me think about, like, recently we just released an episode on Sick Boy about Tricapta coming to Canada and Tricapta being available in Nova Scotia. And for folks who don't know, I live with cystic fibrosis, and Tricapta is basically this life-altering drug that doesn't treat the symptoms of CF, but treats literally at the source. And so it's not quite a cure, but it's the next best thing. And it's a big time for people living with CF, in that we are going through this massive, the folks that are going to get this drug are going to go through this huge transition in their life, and a transition that, like, I had been hoping for my whole life. But then when the news broke that I was actually going to get Tricapta, I didn't expect the transition to be so heavy, and like to have this feeling of like grieving my own identity and all these really weird, unexpected feelings that came with it. And I mean, just hearing you talk right now, John, about the stuff that you guys are seeing in the ways that men communicate or don't communicate when it comes to these transitions, like, man, I'm there right now. Like I was with my partner the other night, and like there was tension between us because I didn't know how to communicate the fucking feelings that I was having about this massive transition that I'm going through, this grief process that I'm going through. And it came out exactly in the way that you just said, John. It came out in like, it manifested in anger. And of course, the next day I'm like, oh fuck, what am I doing? Like that's not what I wanted to come from that situation, you know? So even if you feel like you've got your shit together, I think, like, as speaking as someone who identifies as a male, it's got to be this deep programming within me with the ways that I've been raised and the things that I've viewed in media and all the things that I think about what it means to be masculine, that even when I know it and I actively think about not kind of giving into those stereotypes, it just somehow it's so ingrained. It's so like deeply ingrained in me.
Especially when you get cut off when you're driving your car.
Oh,
dude,
let's not even
fucking road rage.
Let's not talk about my
so
road rage.
Bad. It's
That's
crazy.
bad.
Whoa.
That's
You want to
bad.
see toxic masculinity?
Hey.
Driving in the car with Jer for
It
like
is
10
much
minutes.
better than it used to be. Let's not linger on that.
John, I wanted to ask you a serious and personal question, because I'm curious, as somebody who is so embedded in this work with access to so many tools and a level of probably awareness and self-awareness. What do you find challenging about having, I'm going to try the word again, intimate partner relationships?
Nailed it, dude. Nailed it.
Yeah, a lot, because just picking up on what Jeremy said too, so a lot of times we will feel things and the emotions that we feel might be conflicting. And our drive is to try and be rational and to give you an expert expression of that. And we just might not be there yet. So, for me, and for a lot of guys, I think, it's just trying to sit with feelings to decipher them in a way that they might not make sense. They might be contradictory. We might be feeling happy and sad at the same time. Like Jeremy's story was brilliant. I listened to that episode, and I was actually vacuuming at the time. No disrespect, and I was listening, and part of me was like tearing up because it's very emotional, and the other part of me as a researcher was going, "This is such an amazing example of a transition, because it's hope and it's worry, it's all of these things colliding." And I think, for me, and probably a lot of guys, sometimes we're feeling things and we just don't know why, and then we're trying to make sense of it too quick, or we're trying to close it out too quick. And I think that's one of the things that pops as kind of anger or coming off as gruff or stoic, is that you're either a man of few words or a bloke who's just lost his cool and wandered off, feeling shame that he did that.
That makes me pretty teary-eyed hearing you say that, because I think of two things that my therapist will say to me that always just like break me down. Is one is the first question of like every session, which is, how are you really feeling right now? And the reason why it fucks with me so much is because I can't, like, sometimes I just can't express it. There's just so much. And then the second thing is when she says being a human being is hard, and those things just make me think like as somebody, I'm thinking of you as somebody with so many tools in your toolbox, as I said, but saying like it's still really hard is, comforting and also sad at the same time. And it's like all these different feelings of like, fuck, it's hard.
This is why I wish I was
sometimes.
That's why I wish I was a dog.
And I know, me too.
I look at fucking Donut and I'm like, you have it so easy.
But also being able, and the only way to process the hardness of it is to talk about it and say contradictory things and just, I don't know, give it your best shot.
John, totally agree. Sorry.
No, sorry. I was just trying to get into something that I didn't want to lose track of in my head. What do you think especially over the last few years, probably over the last like five years? I mean, I'm thinking about in the context of we've been doing this podcast, and I feel like I've seen a pretty big transformation over those last the years that we've been doing this. And how does it find its way into the work that you do in the conversation around men not only having to be masculine only, and embracing, femininity and masculinity, and having a healthy balance and incorporating a healthy balance of those two, because they're inherent. They're there. We ascribe certain things to masculine, certain things to feminine, but we embody the whole spectrum of it. How does it work into the work that you do, especially on the conversational side and the relationship side of working with men on what's the word? What best way to put it? Not incorporating it, because it's like it's there already. I guess like unearthing it and using it to your advantage.
Yeah. Great question again. So we use a framework that's called masculinities, and it's in the plural, and it does exactly what you say. It opens it up that masculinity doesn't have to be one thing, doesn't have to be so prescribed. So then there's variations on the theme, and there's a continuum whereby guys, they might have hobbies that would reside outside of, what we typically expect, the traditional male to be doing. Might communicate in different ways, might just carry themselves differently, wear different things, and the openness of that is really important because it creates the opportunity. We talk about diversity, inclusion, equity all the time, but in gender and in men, if we open up that possibility that you can be a man in a myriad of ways, then we just loosen the constraints of having to be a certain way. Whether that's, we say guys are stoic. Well, it's awful to have to be stoic. It's awful to be in that situation. It might work for you in some spots, but in others it's not going to. But it's awful to think that you'd have to be like that because that was the prescribed piece. So,
What role and influence does the media have in all of this? Because I think of like having conversations with our group of friends and like I live in a bit of an echo chamber with these guys, and like I think we all embrace our own femininity or different masculinities in different ways and different areas of our lives. But I can't help but think about how the world in general, media just portrays men in very specific ways, especially in advertising, commercial products. How does that influence the way we think about what it means to be a man?
Yeah, I think the dominant sort of norm. It's always newsworthy when a bloke breaks down and cries in public. And that's just perennially the case. The counter narrative are things like what you guys are doing. So I don't want to get all fanboy on you or anything, but I reckon you guys just do an amazing job because you norm the conversations, you affirm each other in feeling and being able to articulate. I mean, it goes some way to changing norms. People who tune into you see another way. So it creates a possibility. Whereas, I agree, that the story most often told in the media is one of, he cried. What's up with that? And it's funny. We accept blokes crying when they win, like on the sports field. We don't accept it when they lose.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating how those kind of norms are peddled, but eventually over time, I think you can see through it and just work with your own values and conventions.
Yeah, like the perfect world would be when a man cries, it's just like, oh, like emotion. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Instead of oh wow. And this and like you could, like, the same could be said for a ton of things that we see in society, people who have been marginalized for a really long time, and then they they are able to step into themselves in the public sphere, and it's a celebration, and which is great. And I think the world that we're trying to move into is a world where it doesn't need to be a celebration because it's totally cool right from the outset.
Yeah. We have a couple of other really great questions that came in. One is from Heather, and it is we'll go with Heather's, and then I'll add the Liam also kind of chimed in on the same one. So Heather asked, what can a partner do to hold space for a guy so he will feel safe to talk / open up in the relationship? And Liam piggybacked the same question and said, in addition to Heather's question, how can someone hold space for / encourage that conversation for a family member, like a father or a friend?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think can be really helpful is an appointment. And I know it sounds like structured and a bit routine, but I think guys do really well when they're forewarned that a conversation is going to occur at a particular time, and this is what it's about. This is the agenda, so they can prepare. So I think sometimes guys might be a bit frightened off by suddenly being in a space that's a bit deep and haven't thought through it, and might feel unprepared to have some of those conversations. So I think in that way it can be really helpful in the communication way. If you're talking about letting a guy process things and think about things, then I think it's okay to do that. But but to also provide them the opportunity to talk. I'm always kind of surprised that people say, oh, guys don't talk, and you can shut a guy down really quickly, but you can open him up really quickly as well by providing the opportunity for him to talk, which is usually just an open-ended question, and circling back with a loop once or twice to get him in the space and make him feel safe enough to say the things that are going on for him. And I do think it can be done, but sometimes if you don't expect a bloke to talk, I reckon he won't.
Yeah.
He'll pick up on it.
What do you mean circling back with a loop? Could you give us an example of that?
Yeah, so we do a lot of qualitative interviews with people, and we find that when we ask a guy a closed-ended question, so something like, are you doing okay, we will get a yes or a no. So one of the tricks is just very simple, open-ended. So why were you thinking that? How was that for you? What was going on at the time? So to build the narrative a little bit, because oftentimes you just get closed-ended, or you get yes/no answers to closed-ended questions. So it's an opportunity to just circle back with open-ended questions, so you can help them build the narrative, so you can understand the context. Because we're not always great at articulating it straight off the bat.
It's interesting that you mentioned right off the bat, like an appointment, and an appointment be setting a time, setting a place, setting an expectation for the conversation. That's a question that we're still waiting on our honorary doctorates, but they haven't come in the mail yet. But it is something that
They are.
I'm hoping.
Mom. Did you hear that, Mom?
Fingers crossed. We have been since the start of the podcast. People have said, "How do I have these conversations that you're having?" And we went, "Wow, well, you don't need to use microphones." But what was really helpful for us is that we scheduled it, and the expectation was clear. It was set. It was defined, and just that definition of the time and space was laying the nest and the foundation for that conversation to take place in a very open and authentic way. And that's always kind of been the narrative that we've had in terms of helping people navigate these kind of conversations in their own lives with people, with relationships with people.
Taylor has also said countless times that he uses a Whoop strap to measure his heart rate variability, and he said he wants to be in peak performance when he's about to have a really intimate conversation. So he's got to make sure that he has had enough sleep.
The wonderful
that his
thing
nutrition is on point.
My performance,
that he's exercising, because if you're going to have a conversation like this,
performance,
you want to be of peak mindset.
Yeah, I'm looking for peak state. I'm always all about peak state.
I say that tongue in cheek, but it's actually true too. Like if you're having a
John's
day,
straight up guys, he's nodding his head in such agreement.
And I mean that too, in the sense that if you're, also if you're stressed out and you have 100 things on your plate, and then you're trying to go into an emotionally deep or heavy conversation with a partner and be there for them and respond the right way. And Jared, like you were saying earlier about not responding in anger too, you want to make sure that you're in peak performance state.
You're ready for it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Phones are bad things to have around. You got to have the room, the space, and nothing else on your mind. And I agree. It's a requisite, right? So make the appointment and make it work, and if not, reschedule.
Yeah. And that's also something that my other podcast, Turn Me On, that I do with my partner Bridie. That's one of the things that we've heard time and time again when it comes to working on intimate relationships. And when you're looking to have tough conversations, it's be mindful about setting that time to have that conversation, as opposed to just throwing it out there willy-nilly and
catching them off guard.
Yeah, catching someone off guard, or just having a little bit of preparedness when it comes to having conversations that are tough, because conversations that are tough deserve the effort that goes into having them. And
you know what? I think over time, if you build a habit of creating that space and setting that expectation for conversations, I think it does lay the groundwork for you to be able to go into more challenging conversations, more free form in your life. They're easier to then have on the fly when things come up, and you are able to deal with things in a little bit of a better way because you've practiced. I mean, everything, no secret. Anything you want to be better at in life, there needs to be a foundation of practice around it. And
like me with chess, I'm practicing every day, and I'm getting really
practicing to be deep
good.
blue.
The last thing I would add to that too is that if you're standing around and you're in the same room as your partner and you're like, I really want to talk to them about this really hard thing, but I don't know, maybe the time isn't perfectly right now. Bring up the topic, talk about wanting to have that conversation, and then schedule it then.
Yeah.
Don't just put it on the shelf because you think that it's maybe not the right time.
I want to get into another great question that actually came in from a past Sick Boy alum from Joanne. Joanne, how you doing? Hope you're doing well over there on the west coast of the U.S.
Yeah.
Joanne has asked, men are more likely to receive prescription pain medications, but are also more likely to have substance use disorder. Do you think that stigma around men needing to be stoic contributes to physicians just wanting to give them a pill and tough it out?
Well, a couple things. The substance use, one of the most common things we see with depressive symptoms with guys, so if we're talking about pain being emotional plus or minus physical, might show up as somatic. So one of the most common things we see is self-medicating with substances. So if a proxy for that is the prescription of an analgesic, it's not self-medicating, it's prescription medication, and perhaps there's always a bit of a trap, that you can treat the symptom and not what underpins it. So I guess, a good clinical assessment would help you more ably decide whether, we just need a bit of short-term analgesia here and he'll kick over. But if there's something deeper going on, sort of incumbent on us all to be aware of that and think about, other routes, in addition to or in place of a medication.
In that conversation about like substance abuse and men, one of the big things and one of the big stats that was in our pre-show, and one of the things that Mitch had mentioned was that suicide among men is just like, I mean, the numbers are astounding. Can we talk a little bit about the signs to look out for when it comes to the men that are in our lives, and things that maybe might present in men more so than women when it comes to like depression and suicide or suicide ideation and things like that?
Yeah, so we believe and have for the longest time there's a discordant relationship between men's low rates of diagnosed depression and high rates of suicide. So I'm not saying the only pathway to suicide is depression, but we know severe depression is a real risk factor. We believe that guys show up in clinical practice, especially early on, with depressive symptoms of anger, irritability, substance overuse, risk-taking, over-involvement in sports and work. The tough bit about this is that we would actually see that in guys, of a certain age, maybe college-age guys and things, and go, well, that's just guys being guys. And so a lot of times I believe we're missing the depressive symptoms that are showing up in guys, and then we end up with this higher rate of suicidal ideation, plans, attempts. And we did a study way back, 2007, and we interviewed guys about depression. And we were surprised they all talked about suicide, plans and thoughts. So there's a real connection, and sometimes we're missing it. And this is not a criticism of clinical work. This is for all of us every day. If a guy's continuously aggressive and overusing substances, there's a pretty good chance that there's some depressive symptoms going on there.
That is absolutely fascinating that there is such an overlap of depressive symptoms with stereotypical guy behavior. That blows my mind.
Yeah.
How do you how do you decipher that? Like that must be really, really challenging.
So we use a couple of scales. One's called the men's depression or male depression risk scale. And it does actually include all of those items that I've mentioned. And it helps us think about it because we ask them to rate it on a frequency of how often. So that's part of the thing. You know, guys are always going to probably have a drink and a night out and a bit of a bender here and there. But when it's patterned and it's across time, same with aggression, irritability, then it starts to crop up in a problematic way. And so it's really about frequency and severity. And you can see it in your mates sometimes. You know, they might go through a period where, you know, you start to worry that they're not quite, you know, who they were or who they are, you know, in terms of just sometimes getting into substances and just doing more of something, you know. So just being aware of it as a good friend and being willing to just go there and ask how they're doing, you know, what's going on for them, I think can really help.
If somebody's listening to this, John, right now, and they're sort of hearing these things and going, fuck, that sounds a little bit like me, but they're not ready to open up to their friends, or they don't know how to talk to someone, what's something that they could do, an easy first step that could start them down the right path to feeling a little bit better?
You know, to self-monitor a little bit and just, you know, if you've got an inkling that these things are cropping up, then I think it's really worthwhile starting to just employ a couple of things to slow things down. So the idea that you might just take a little bit of time out, and try and decipher what it is that's encumbering you, what the issue is, where this movement's been in terms of, oh, I'm drinking more, I'm angry, I'm anxious all the time, like where that might be coming from. And that can just help you slow it down and deconstruct. And it might be that with some, you know, it might be as simple as, you know, some meditation, some mindfulness and a nice herbal tea, and everything might sort out. Or it might require something a little bit more, you know, something a little bit more formal in terms of talking to a professional. But never underestimate, you know, the power of friends and socially connecting to people in ways that they can just listen, just be there for you and help you work through some of the issues. Because sometimes it's just about talking through things.
Yeah, I'm really. This is really just me thinking out loud of how grateful I am for both of you guys and for you know, we've got a pretty close knit friend group, and like the net isn't cast super wide, and I feel like in having this conversation and thinking about like why that might be, you know, like we are very supportive of each other, and there is that space to have like open and challenging conversations, and I'm feeling like maybe, well, it just kind of happened in a way that we sort of created this space of people that like kind of all had this like-mindedness, and we really kind of like created this like supportive system for each other. I'm just feeling grateful for having that. John, I'm curious to know, where does this all start for you? What brings you down? What brings you down this path of this career and into this like specific lane in your medical career?
Yeah. So I never really had a plan. You know, things kind of, for me, just always happened kind of by accident. Worked clinically in emergency rooms, began teaching, then began researching. But I'd always had this feeling that right from the emergency work, oftentimes guys would come in, they'd be clutching their middle chest, they'd be diaphoretic, like sweating, and they'd be saying, I don't have chest pain. And I was always intrigued, you know, because we'd triage them high and turn out they'd had an infarct, and you'd work with that. But just the behaviours always kind of interested me, you know, in what I was seeing and trying to make sense of that. So human behaviour is fascinating for me. And clinically, we didn't always have, I don't think we always had the time or made the time to perhaps have the deeper conversations about where things might be coming from. You know, your job was kind of a bit more biomedical with just in a lot of cases. So it's kind of full circle, just been lucky enough to be able to have great mentors around me and be able to, get paid to think, about behaviours and try and come up with some ideas about how we can assist blokes along the way.
Mm. John, I got to say, this has been a real treat to be able to sit down and pick your brain about the research that you're putting into men's health, the work that you're doing with Movember. Is there anything that you really wanted to touch on tonight that we didn't really get around to, or anything that you kind of want to leave us with before we wrap up here?
No, I just thank you for the opportunity to meet you guys. I'm a fan, and I love what you do, and it's just such it's been a real nice day for me. It's been a really good Monday waiting for you guys and being on. So no, just keep up the great work, and for your audience, the value of the social connection between you guys and you got each other's backs is super important. And it's I think I said to you, Jeremy, it's like the elixir. If we could bottle you blokes, we'd be a lot better off, I think.
Oh, stop it!
I have a feeling that elixir would taste quite bitter, but thank you. That is very kind of you, John. Thank you so much for taking time out of your evening tonight to sit down with us and hang out with us. This really meant the world to us, and enjoy the rest of your day over in Vancouver.
Great.
Yeah,
Thanks
this is super intimate.
Oh yeah,
Oh, you did it again.
You did it.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
Folks, thank you so much. This has been a real treat. Again, sickboypodcast.com/Movember. Donate to the cause. Choose the mustache that you love the most. Whoever loses is going to get a tattoo of a mustache on the inside of their lip. Taylor doesn't want that to happen to him, so at least get him beyond Brian.
I will do it, please.
I don't think it's going to be possible to surpass my donation so far.
Hey,
Okay.
I have really sensitive lips, so
We are we're halfway to our goal of $5,000, and it would mean the world to us if you helped us along that way. Again,
Especially me.
all of the money is going towards something very valuable and very very important, men's health. So thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Means the world to us. We fucking love all of you. Thanks for chiming in the chat. Thanks for the questions. Big shout out to our Patreon community. Always love seeing you in the chat and seeing you on these live shows.
Yes.
And until the next time, and hopefully that next time is when we are in your city where we're doing a live show in person. We love you. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your night. Take care, everybody.
Thank you again to John and Mitch.
yeah, thanks guys.
Bye, guys.